Hey Sai Ram viewers, my name is Darshan Governor and welcome to Byte Fusion. In today's video, we're going to discuss loops. Okay, let's get right into it. Okay everyone, so in Java, there's actually a way to execute code by running over the code and over the code a number of times. And this running over of code is called iterating. So how do we do this exactly? Well, one way to actually loop through code in Java is to use a while loop. So to create a while loop, we have to use the keyword while. We open up our argument and we open up our braces. And we can put a condition inside this loop. So we can say, for instance, true. So what is the while loop doing? The while loop is basically checking for this condition here. So this is a continuous condition because it's saying continue forever while this is true, right? So if we try to print something in between this, as you'll see, this just keeps running, right? It doesn't stop because it runs forever. I'm going to create a small program to show you exactly how a while loop works. Give me a moment. Okay, everyone. So as you can see, I've created this small program, and what's happening here is that we're asking the user to basically enter a password. And if the password is equal to admin, then we want to give access. We want to grant access to the user. Otherwise, if it's incorrect, we want the user to try again. So there's a number of things that are actually happening here. One thing is that we have this while loop and we have this condition where verified is equal to false. And what's basically going to happen is that this loop is going to continuously execute until verified is equal to true. So in some places we want to put verified equal to true. So for say instance over here, we want to say verified equal to true, right? Right. So we're also checking, we're doing an if and else statement over here. And I've just mentioned what it's doing. So let's run this and actually see what happens. Okay, so say for instance, I enter my password is -G, right? We know that that's incorrect. So it'll say incorrect, try again. Maybe we can try a number, some sort of like advanced string. It's still saying incorrect, try again. I remember what the password is. I'm going to type in admin. If I press enter, you'll see it says access granted. So that's one way of how you can use a while loop in Java. Now there's another way to use a while loop and I'm going to show you that just now. Okay, so an alternative way to actually use a while loop is to do it in the reverse order. So instead of having to check our condition at the beginning of the loop, we can check it at the end of the loop. So how do we do this? We basically put the keyword do, we open up our curly braces, and at the end we put in our keyword while. We enter in our condition, and because while is at the end of the loop, right, we have to put a semicolon. Now, if you've noticed in the previous while loop that I created, I didn't put a semicolon because conditions like conditional statements don't really require a semicolon. But in this case, because we're doing while at the end of the loop, we have to put a semicolon. So now if I run this and try to enter in some passwords, and now I enter in the correct password, you'll see it says access granted. So that's basically how you can use a while and a do while loop in Java. Alright everyone, so I've actually typed out these statements over here, and this is actually another type of loop that you can use in Java. It's called a for loop. So how does a for loop work exactly? So in order to declare a for loop, we need to use the keyword for. We need to open up our condition and we need to close with curly braces. Now in a for loop, you have three different kinds of arguments that you go through. First, you have the initializer, then you have the condition that needs to be met, and you have the process. So the process, or we call it the iteration. So in the initializer, I'm initializing I equal to 1. And for the condition, I'm saying if I is less than equal to number, which is the number that we want the user to input, which is less than the number divided by 2. So say if we enter 10, then that would be 5. And then we're saying increment I for this loop every time we go through an iteration. Starting from 2, of course. So now, this is basically a small program that's showing you how to search for prime numbers. So for instance, let's execute this program. So it asks you to enter a number. So say I enter the number 3. We obviously know that 3 is a prime number, right? Then it will print out this is a prime number. Now you can do this for much larger numbers. Like say I use the number 23. 23 is a prime number. What if I use a number like 20? You can clearly say it says this is not a prime number, But here's a problem. The problem is that it's printing out this is not a prime number 4 times, but we only wanted to print it out once. So this is where another type of function becomes very useful in Java, and that's called the break statement. Right, so what does a break statement do? A break statement basically terminates a loop when a condition is met. So for instance, we've said here, it doesn't have to necessarily be because a condition is met, but in this instance, we're saying if this condition is true, then we want to break the loop. And what it does is it breaks the innermost loop. So this loop here, for which is actually our innermost loop, and I'll teach you about outer and inner loops just now, this loop has to be broken. So if we run this and we type in 20, you'll see it only prints out this is not a prime number once, because it doesn't need to check all the other numbers once it finds out that, hey, this is a prime number. So that's one way to use a for loop. That's using a for loop when we actually increment. Now you can actually decrement and use a for loop. Let me show you that right now. Okay, so as you can see, I've actually reversed the iteration process. Instead of incrementing, I'm now decrementing. So I'm saying I minus minus. And I want you to keep this in mind. Just like I've said how decrementing and incrementing works in my previous video, keep in mind that this minus minus is coming after the I. So that means after these statements execute, then we want to increment I. Then we want to decrement I by 1, right? Whereas if we actually put minus minus before the I, we're saying, hey, at the very beginning when we start, we know 10 divided by 2 is 5. We want to start from 4 and we want to decrement downwards. So instead of doing it before, we're going to do it after, because I think that's much more useful. So now if we run this program, we can enter any number. Say we enter the number 35, right? It's going to say this is a prime number, this is not a prime number. Okay, everybody, so I've actually picked up an error in my program. If you can figure out what this error is, I'm going to give you a clue though. It's a logical error, right? So as you can see, I've actually typed in the number 35 and it says this is a prime number, this is not a prime number. Can you actually figure out what type of logical error I've committed in this program? I want you to pause the video and I want you to figure it out, okay? Alright, so if you figured it out, I've actually said here, else if I is equal to num divided by 2. Now we know we're not incrementing and we're decrementing, right? So what I should have actually put here is if I is equal to 2. So now if I run this now and I say 35, you can see it says this is not a prime number. But if I say something like 11, it says this is a prime number. Alright, so that's another way you can use loops in Java. Now there's actually another way that you can use loops, and that's called nested loops. So just like in if else we have nested if and else statements, we can also have nested loops in Java. So how does that work? Well, I'm going to show you right now. Okay, so as you can see, I've actually printed out these for loops, and I have an outer for loop, which is this loop here, and I have an inner for loop, which is this loop over here. What this is basically doing is we're going through weeks 1, 2, and 3, right? So we're going through weeks 1, 2, and 3, and then we want to print out every single day for that week. So if we try to run this, we have like this. We have week 1, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, up to day 7. Week 2, 1 up to 7. Week 3, 1 up to 7, right? And that's a way in which you can actually use an inner. That's another way of saying. That's basically how you can use outer and inner for loops in Java. Okay, guys. So just like you have, you can actually set one variable, right, in a condition. You can also set two variables in a condition. So I've given a nice example here where I've set I equal to 0, j equal to 0, and I'm saying I plus j less than 10. That's my condition, and my iteration is I want to iterate I by 1, and I want to iterate j by 1. So if I run this, you'll see we get the numbers 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and those are even numbers that are less than 10. So that's another thing that can be very useful in Java. So you can declare more than one variable inside a for loop. But if you've noticed in the previous loops that I created, I basically created an outer for loop with int I equal to 0. Okay, let me explain what I'm trying to say. Okay, so I want to actually show you something in Java that you'll pick up as you program. So one of the misconceptions in for loops is that you can use the same variable again in the inner loop. Now if you can see in the outer loop I've declared I and j, but the reason why you can't do this is because it's already declared in the outer loop. So you can't actually initialize j in the inner loop because we've already used that variable in the outer loop. I want you to keep that in mind when you work with for loops. Okay everyone, so if you remember earlier I spoke about how you can use break to terminate out of a loop, right? Which is the innermost loop, as I've mentioned. You can also use another type of statement or command in Java that's called continue. And what this command basically does is instead of having to terminate that loop, you can actually terminate an iteration of the loop. So for instance, I have here, I set the condition if I mod 2 is equal to 0, I want to continue. So what does that basically mean? Every statement that comes after continue is going to be skipped. And we're going to go back to the iteration and we're going to continue our iteration. So system.out.println is not going to print any value that's an even number because we have continue as our statement that's causing that condition to be met. So if we run this, we should get 13579, right? But if I actually used break in this statement instead of using continue, then you can see I've actually broken out of the loop entirely. In fact, 0 itself is divisible by 2, right? So it's not even going to print out anything. So that's the difference between break and continue in Java. Okay guys, so that brings us to the end of the video. This was quite a short video, but in this video you've actually picked up on some really useful skills and a very useful skill in programming, and that's how to deal with loops and how to deal with commands and loops such as continue and break. Right, so I hope you guys have actually enjoyed this video. If you like it, please like the video. Please subscribe to my channel. I actually want to just give a shout out to those people who have actually subscribed to my channel. I know that generally people like to view something, but it's very scarce that people actually subscribe. I'm sorry, I don't actually know your guys' names because the YouTube statistics is not really showing me it. But I am thankful to you guys, so thank you just for subscribing. I would also like to say if you want to know anything about programming, if you have any questions, leave comments in this video below. Please share this video around with others, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much. Sai Sita Ram.